Hi everyone, I'm Sabrina and I am a high school history teacher in Montclair, and I'm also an alumni of Montclair State. And while I was doing my undergrad, I worked at the ADP Center. So, what I'm going to be sharing with you today is a project I created, and it is called the COVID-19 Time Capsule Project. So, when we began distance learning, it quickly became clear that this is a new time for all of us, and especially our students. And as a history teacher, I realized that one day I'm going to be teaching this time period to a whole new group of students. So I wanted to give my students the opportunity to put all of their memories into one place. So I created this project that I'm going to be walking you through, and hopefully you'll be able to use it with your students. So this is the COVID-19 Time Capsule Project. I'm just going to walk you through the different requirements. So I started with a little prompt just explaining to them that every generation has a historical event that defines them, and for their generation, this global pandemic will most likely be that event. Some of their grandparents might remember Pearl Harbor, some of their parents should remember September 11th. So just giving them sort of the background as to why this is important to make a time capsule. Now on to the requirements. So I'm having my students create Google Slides presentations, and I have high school students, so this was geared towards them. But you can change this presentation to fit the needs of your students if they're in middle school or elementary school. I started off by having them find 3 pictures that they think best represent the pandemic, and each picture should have a caption. Then they should find 3 important dates and what happened on those dates. They could also include in pictures with these events if they wish. Then they should find 2 newspaper articles. The articles should be from reliable news sources. This is very important. They should have a picture of the headline and links to each article. Then I wanted students to also include something that was uplifting because during this pandemic, it's easy to get caught up in all of the terrible news coming out. So I wanted to focus on the positive things that people are doing around the world. So they should find 2 stories or pictures or videos that are uplifting and include any links. Then I want them to find a map that shows some aspect of the pandemic. It could be state, city, or globally. And there should be a caption to explain what the map is showing. News briefings are very important, so I wanted the students to find 1 news briefing and include the video along with the caption. It's also important to remember that this is a global pandemic, so I want students to find 1 news story from somewhere outside of the United States stating how a different country is dealing with the pandemic. And like the other news articles, they should include the headline as well as the link to the article. Next, I want students to find a before and after picture of an empty landmark that was closed due to the pandemic, and I gave them the example of New York City. Next, students are spending a lot of time on social media, and I want them to find a meme or tweet or social media post that is going to remind them of the pandemic. I made it very clear that it should be school appropriate and not offensive to anyone affected by the coronavirus. Essential workers are very, very important during this time, so I wanted the students to take the time and write a brief thank you note to someone who is an essential worker. It doesn't have to be specifically someone they know, it could just be a general thank you note to a group of essential workers. Last, students are going to write a 2-paragraph historical reflection discussing their memories of living during this pandemic. You can make this more than 2 paragraphs, less than 2 paragraphs, whatever fits your students. I included some questions for them to think about, like how their life has changed, has anyone been affected, by the coronavirus that you know, how school changed. What are your thoughts and feelings during this time? And what would you want to tell someone in the future about living during a pandemic? I also gave them the option to, instead of writing their historical reflection, they can record a vlog of themselves. And it should be at least 2 minutes long if they choose to do it this way. They should also include at least 3 pictures of their life during the pandemic. The last thing I wanted students to include is a picture of them and their family, just to give it that personal touch because everyone is spending time at home during quarantine. I also included some reminders that these are their experiences and that they should be sensitive to anyone struggling during this time. And lastly, to be creative and then make sure to include all the links during their presentation. So in my directions, I included an example of the time capsule project. I didn't include everything in the example. I just wanted to give students kind of a brief idea of how they should set up their projects. So on mine, I included the 2 pictures and the captions that go along with them. You could see I included a news briefing and I embedded the video so you could click right on it and watch it. And I also included the caption. Then for my news article, I took a picture of the headline and then also include the link to the article. Here I have a map with a caption, and I also found a picture of an empty Times Square for my landmark picture, and also put the caption. So this is just a brief example for students to reference. So this is an example of one of my students' time capsules. I'm just going to go through the different pieces that they included. This is a compilation of a bunch of different students' time capsule projects. Like I said before, you can adapt this any way you like to fit the needs of your students. I think it could easily be changed to fit multiple grade levels. So this is an introduction slide. So this student, for their 3 pictures, they chose different clip art that they've seen in the news or social media or online. Other students chose to pick actual photos, whether it be of healthcare workers or people working on the front lines or empty grocery store shelves. And she also included all of her captions. Next are the important dates. So the student included each of the dates along with what happened on those dates. Next is a news article. So the student included the name of the article and the link and a picture. Next are an example of the news conference. The student included the one of President Trump along with a link to the article, and then this one is the international news article, and this one is from Spain. And again, she included the headline and the description and link. Here's an example of the uplifting stories. So this student included how people are putting rainbows in their windows or writing inspiring messages in chalk. Another example of inspiring stories, again, this one is a teenager bringing groceries to seniors, and she included a description, a picture, and a link. Here is an example of a map a student included, and here is a picture of a landmark before and after, along with the link. Here is a meme that a student included. I thought this one was funny and appropriate because we're going to definitely remember the struggle to get toilet paper. Here's an example of a thank you letter, and the student chose to thank our grocery store workers. This student included pictures of their daily life. I thought it was great that they included Google Classroom, our new way of learning, the supplies people have to wear to go out, including their masks and gloves, and how they're spending their time walking. This student included their family Zoom calls and their walks. And here is an example of one of the students' pandemic experience and what she was feeling during this time period. And lastly, a sign that a student's brother made for the door. I thought this was a really great thing to include in their time capsule project. So again, I hope that this gives you an idea of what these projects looked like for my students. They could be adapted to fit the needs of your students. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And I hope this has been helpful for you and something you could use during distance learning.